The opinions expressed in the following are those of its participants and do not necessarily reflect those of the producers and the Six Talk Podcast Network. Also, the following contains mature material and mild language, which may not be suitable for all audiences. Discretion is advised.
For Father's Day Sunday, June 20th. Yeah, it's June 20th, right?
Are we sure about that?
Yeah.
Positive.
Okay.
Positive? Okay, it's not like June 19th?
Are you sure it's not the 21st?
The real question is, what year is it?
2021. This is episode 45 of the Anime Roundtable Canada, presented by Anime North. Happy Father's Day again. Good afternoon from 6 Points, 10 minutes south of the Anime North compound in the Toronto West End. Mike Nicolas, James Austin, Kevin Ng, Mohamed Sharmarke, and Geoff Greig with you on this final day of spring. Yay, it's almost summer. A quick reminder again, you can contact us. Email animeroundtable@gmail.com, Twitter and Instagram @animeroundtable, animeroundtable.com for show notes and past episodes. We have a group on Facebook, and eventually we can talk a little Discord, Twitch, and YouTube in the future. Okay, do you want to get right to it? Or is there something else you want to bring up?
Well, we do have a lot to get through, don't we, Mike?
Let's do it, guys.
I heard we're riding the train to start off.
Okay.
Yes, that record-breaking training.
You always seem to try and find good segues, James. Cheesy segues, dad joke-like segues. Happy Father's Day to all the fathers out there again.
I thought you were going to say Happy Father's Day to James, but then I was like, wait.
That would be very odd.
James?
It would be a surprise to James.
There'd be a surprise.
James, got news for you. You are the father.
Okay, let's get to business. I guess we should now. So we're doing episodes on consecutive weeks because as we finished up last week, we made this promise to do an episode where we catch up on some of the headlines in brief that we just haven't gotten around to talking about in more recent episodes. And while we're doing an all bullets episode this time around, I get the feeling most of these are fairly recent in comparison to the others we have otherwise left behind and probably, hopefully, will acknowledge in another episode to come. But we'll do our best as we begin with the bullets. Presented in point form, but could become full essays. I think the reason we're being more recent with the selection we decided for this episode is mainly because the first few we're doing have a common thread. And if there's something we've been trying to do when talking about things in the last few episodes, it's about common threads. At Anime North, during the stay-at-home edition, we did bullets based on streaming services and a common yes-no theme. And by the way, the yes-no segment turned out a lot better than I thought. So I get the feeling we're going to be doing a lot more of that in the future. And it may become its own segment down the line. Last week's episode, on the topic of common themes, we started with music and then used it to transition into live action talk. So let's start the bullets with another common thread. And that thread is an often talked about one, not just here, but probably in much of the anime and manga fandom world. And that's Demon Slayer. I joked that these are presented in point form, but I get the feeling whenever Matt Alt writes about things, and he did write an article for the New Yorker about Demon Slayer and its popularity, we're going to be talking about it like an essay.
Maybe more of a cannonball than a bullet.
Yeah. Well, way to play the line, Geoff. Okay. So let's start with that. 2 days ago, yes, on the 18th, on Friday, Matt Alt put up an article, and it's on his Twitter, and we'll give the links. It was on the New Yorker website. He talked a lot at length about the popularity of Demon Slayer And he gave a lot of interesting background about the popularity of Demon Slayer, how it's changed a lot of things, a lot of about a lot of mainstream conceptions about anime, how popular it's become, and how my interpretation is like he did acknowledge the Miyazaki aspect of that discussion. When we've made that joke, we made that had that discussion about Miyazaki looking at it as a rival, but he kind of went in depth into that thought. And when I came away thinking the whole idea isn't totally far-fetched now. So, like, there's a bunch of ways we can start to approach Matt Alt's article on Demon Slayer. Where do you want to start? Anybody? Like, how far do we want to start into the article? Do we want to go basically in the topics he talked about, or is there something that already grabbed your attention?
I guess it's an interesting thing that Matt Alt talked about, just small nuggets in the New Yorker article. For example, when you said a rivalry, or that Miyazaki considers something like Demon Slayer, maybe something newer, a rival, or even maybe other orators that they talked to in different articles over the past year, like Tomino and stuff like that, that at least in Miyazaki's case, it's interesting because there's a different contrast between him and then how anime is made now. Like they look over everything. It's done all in Ghibli and he is like pinpoint and they get independent financing. Whereas everything that's in the normal mainstream and normal anime is done through the production committee and stuff like that. And they're the ones at the head. And so it's kind of interesting talking about passing to the next generation. And it's like, well, what does that mean when we know how bad the animation industry is in Japan, stuff like that, and how they want to be on that production committee because they don't get to pull the purse strings or get to make those decisions. And others have talked about that for many months and, of course, previous years.
I think and this is where the heart of where I'm beginning to think the whole rivalry thing isn't far-fetched. Miyazaki could always depend on degrees of commercial success, degrees of critical acclaim, and he's doing it his way. And and seemingly he scoffs at the standard production styles. But I think the success of something like Demon Slayer is a threat to his status quo, the way he's been going about it. This is like an affirmation that the machine style, would you call the production committee style kind of like a machine, a juggernaut of sorts? It'll get you the money. It's meant to get you money, but now there's a bit of acclaim and the financial success to go with it. Sorry, did I interrupt somebody?
No, I was just saying it's like, yeah, a claim, I guess, definitely probably is there, but the financial success is they hit more than a home run, and usually they're hoping just to get their money back and then a bit after that. So definitely they hit way more than they thought they were going to hit, even with the acclaim of UFO Studio and stuff like that being at the helm as well, known from the Fate Stay Night. Animes and stuff like that, but they definitely hit it way out of the park compared to what they have, and it's almost like a once in a generation type thing. But the other thing, interesting enough, in that article was, as we said, this movie for Demon Slayer, it's not like if you go in, you're going to understand everything because it actually takes place after the TV series. And as one of the
Yep.
quotes they said from IndieWire, they said, it's almost impressive how fast Mugen Train is able to completely disorient anyone who hasn't already know where it's going. So, and that's an interesting thing that maybe the pandemic helps this type of thing too, because as they said, maybe after that, they're like, what the hell did I just see? And then they turn on to Netflix or Crunchyroll and then get a full taste of it. It's like, oh, I see now. And then maybe they go back. Who knows?
Yeah, that's an interesting part. We talk about the whole merchandise mix. And when we talk about the mix can also, movies and television can be considered separate items in this mix, right?
And
I
people are definitely love the bingeable, and if they had an interest, right, they'll dive in deep.
Geoff?
I do think that this article really sort of changed my perspective on this kind of rivalry, because I think, at first, pass the idea of, oh, this is a rivalry, it's apples versus oranges, really sort of came to mind. But Maddall's article really made me sort of recontextualize it as, yes, it's apples and oranges. It's a rivalry between apples and oranges. Miyazaki really doesn't like these oranges, or he really, sees the incredible intrinsic value and the artistry of the apple. What are these oranges doing here? They're commoner fruits, like, exaggerating here a little bit. But it's, with all that about it being it's a adaptation of a serialized, series. I'm looking at the animated highest grossing films in Japan list, and you have Demon Slayer at the top, but then you skip down 5 to get a Doraemon movie, and then skip down another 2 to get the first Pokemon movie. And then Pokemon and Dragon Ball and Detective Conan and One Piece are kind of sprinkled in there. But, the top have been your Miyazaki and, Shinkai, these kind of movies that would, in the academic circles, probably more be capable of acquiring the mythical title of film versus, the Doraemon or Pokemon or even Demon Slayer, movies probably wouldn't, be able to get that classification if in the academic circles.
Yeah. So
And it was
you kind of see where I'm going with it, right? You kind of
Yeah,
sort of agree that with
it's
my
almost like
thought
a
on it then?
yeah, absolutely. Like it's almost this culture war, or subculture war, I guess. Miyazaki, as I think I've mentioned on this podcast before, like he's kind of memeified famous for saying anime was a mistake. And, I don't think that he's made a secret of the fact that, he's not interested in, the serialized shonen or shoujo, pop anime series. He's an into animation. He's interested in animation as a medium, but he's always considered these things separate. But because they are both animation in some respect, it's this interesting. The rivalry has almost become this sort of auteur, as Matt Alt wrote. It's this sort of the more artistry, your Shinkai, your Miyazaki, Hasoda to an extent. Um, competing with, adaptations of, again, the pop anime, the Dragon Ball, the Demon Slayer, the My Hero Academia. Um, it looks like he's finally seeing this as like a rivalry, I guess a little bit more seriously, and thinking, oh, there's a certain amount of market share, or maybe even just public consciousness of, I want people to see, my more artful movies. And I mean that more of a literary sense, not necessarily the actual drawings on the screen. And I think that's fascinating, to see. And I'm curious if it is a cultural shift or if it is an anomaly. And I don't think we'll find out for maybe years.
That's the thing. I'm not totally sure
it
it's an
was
anomaly. At this point, I'm not sold. This could be a shock to the system. There's many different shocks coming. So this is just yet another one, the way I'm beginning to look at it.
it's
And
interesting thinking on Jeff's point though, Mike.
Mhm.
And I was thinking about the one quote they said basically about Demon Slayer in Japan. Basically, in 3 months, as Matt Alt said, they did what it took Hayao Miyazaki's Spirit Away to do in 19 years and counting. And so that's a big first, obviously, for them. And it is a first kind of in Japan in my mind because it almost brings us back to the best animation feature in the Oscars, right? How we're like, oh, we hope maybe an anime might be nominated. And even if it is nominated, it's never going to be the Disney machine or the Pixar machine or whatever, because for a long time they just had the Open Academy Day and they're like, okay, what do my kids like? We're going to vote for that and stuff like that. And
And
so you definitely,
those people have admitted to not watching the animated films. Like it's a joke, and most of the animation industry sort of acknowledges that it as a joke.
and
But
I
they
know
still
they have, and I know they have tightened up, Geoff, obviously recent years and stuff like that, but it's still tough for, I'd say, a film like, Miyazaki's or more auteur artistic film to break through and stuff like that in my mind. And this is kind of one of those few times, we'll see how it goes in the future for Japan, but that this type of more mainstream one just kicks it into gear and stuff like that, kind of like as we've seen with the past decade or decade and a half of the Marvel universe and stuff like that, where it's like now they kicked it into the gear and bam, 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 they got their summer blockbusters, right?
like Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse did well from what I remember, and I think that that's
Mm-hmm.
like the biggest comparison I can see where, it's this movie based on a franchise. It gets a lot of respect.
It's a
Um,
commercial thing. It really is
yeah,
a commercial thing.
yeah. I think it's a little bit more independent. Like you didn't have to have read any Spider-Man or seen any other Spider-Man movies to appreciate like the plot or the messages there. But it's still this instance of, here's this comic book property that is making this very popular, fairly successful movie. Not as successful as Demon Slayer, but that's the closest thing I can think of, especially in the animation realm.
And I
Hmm.
guess it's interesting because you forget about Spider-Man, it's like how big Marvel and stuff like that, but it definitely had a different vibe watching that movie than probably any other animated Spider-Man or Marvel or DC animation we had seen probably before.
Yeah.
Arguably the best
So,
animated Spider-Man ever.
oh yeah, yeah. Spider Verse.
Hmm.
I mean, I enjoyed it. I've
It,
seen it. Yeah.
soundtrack was great.
Soundtrack was great. The whole idea was great. I thought it was just so well executed. That was just so well executed, and it opens up unlocks a whole bunch of possibilities to come, and they're starting to work on that.
I regret not
You
seeing.
got the video game. Sorry.
I regret not going to see it in theaters.
I'm
Oh
pretty
yeah.
sure. I'm pretty sure they'll show it again.
I
For sure,
imagine
the
they will
movie theaters have to
somewhere
recover.
for some special engagement. Yeah.
I'm
Hmm.
sure
I'm
if G-Kids can bring back Ghibli films every year, bring them back out of the vault, I'm sure a few others like Spider-Verse and a few others hopefully will come back and it'll be a nice little treat for those who do want to see it in a limited run, right?
I just want to see
Hmm.
Ponyo in Japanese, man. Like they always play it in English, and the English dub is good, and I've seen it in English, but I just want to watch it in Japanese once.
Which one was
Okay.
that? Ponyo?
Ponyo, yeah.
Ponyo.
Yeah, Betty White distracted me so much in the English dub of that. Like, it was fine, but it's like, oh hey, Betty White's under the water. Cool. Um, like I know that we've touched on this already, but like I'm still incredibly fascinated with that quote that James mentioned from the Alt article, that like this movie is just a direct continuation of a franchised or a serialized series, which all of the other, like even if I look at the other series or series movies based on series like Pokemon and Dragon Ball, those might have very vague connections. Detective Conan, even though it's part of a series, because of the way that series is set up, they can function independently. Same with One Piece. Like it may fit in
Yeah.
continuity, but a lot of these essentially are filler. I'm trying to think of,
Standalones, really,
yeah, like
in many respects.
I don't
Yeah.
even know if an American movie of any kind, live action or otherwise, like I'm sure there are examples, have just done a straight up like plot continuation. Like just imagine if like Game of Thrones, instead of season 8, we're just gonna make a movie. This is how you experience the end of the series. I know Demon Slayer isn't the end, but for a situation where a plot continuation is the highest grossing like animated film, I just find fascinating, just from a, as that article said, like it inherently alienates like so many people, but that didn't matter.
Yeah,
The
like
thing is, yeah, it's pretty unforgiving, Kevin.
I was thinking there. I can think of a couple of examples, but not where they stick it in the middle of the narrative. If they ever do sequel movies, it's usually at the end, and that concludes the franchise, or so we think. In the case of Madoka Magica, but
And Firefly, right? Like there was
yes,
I think
that was a sequel
Full Metal
movie.
Alchemist kind of did the same thing, right?
No, no, they
Those
didn't
two were
actually.
kind of
Well,
standalone, weren't they?
the first series, yes, but
Yeah,
you
so
could
the original
argue
end.
that that wasn't needed. Honestly, I feel like the ending of the original TV series was serviceable on its own. What else? I guess there's Samurai X, Trust and Betrayal.
That was sort
Although
of a prequel, but
they never did fully adapt Rurouni Kenshin in anime format.
they never did, and they never did the transition into that. That was like Trust and Betrayal was very much standalone. The TV series, the original TV series, ended without so much of a real mention of that. I think the only hint you got was when, at the end of the Kyoto saga, Kenshin visits Tomoe's grave, and we get a hint of it. But there's no further acknowledgement aside from that scene.
Yeah, because the Kenshin anime got canceled.
Yeah, it just started to spin wheels at that point.
And I also think that like Conqueror of Shambhala for Full Metal Alchemist or Serenity, I don't think they would be considered wildly successful. Is
Nope.
the
No,
other
they were
point.
not.
Like I think they're you know, you can probably find smatterings of plot continuations or things like that in the history of movies and film, but I don't think any are, you know, great, financially success. Like with animation, Steven Universe kind of did that in the middle, but that's more of a direct to digital. Like it had a few screenings,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not something that's going to be incredibly successful. Like as popular as that series is, it was very niche, like more so than something like Demon Slayer. um, but it wasn't shooting above its weight class, so to speak, which Demon Slayer did and succeeded despite all the you know problems that come with no one who hasn't seen it knows what's going on.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. First of all, it acknowledges the bingeability and how it became bingeable during the pandemic. And I'm not delusional to think, would this have happened if the pandemic didn't happen? Or
Probably
maybe
not.
that's an irrelevant question to ask because it did. So let's not speculate on that. There's no point speculating on that because it did happen.
I think the other key thing, Mike, that helps the bingeability and people going is that they did get it on Netflix and stuff like that. If it had stayed on Funimation and Crunchyroll, they probably wouldn't have gotten the biggest boost, which is Netflix, I think, or the more mainstream
Yeah.
audience.
100%. The
So
accessibility of the show is what made it so popular.
so it's less. So to you guys, it's less COVID and more Netflix.
Yeah.
Would you
Could
say
be
that?
a bit of both, as they
Yeah, I
say.
think it's a
There's
bit
a
of
lot of
both.
things that helped it. I think that altogether kind of
It,
pushed it further than it probably ever would without.
or would you say it's all perfect storm? This was just
Yeah,
a perfect storm.
I think so.
You still could have gotten a good chunk of it if the pandemic didn't happen. And well, I think maybe you're right. Netflix is the key thing in this equation.
Because everyone who is on Funimation or on Crunchyroll is already going to watch it, right? So it's like trying to get that extra bit. Recommend to the person who's not on Crunchyroll, who's everyone has Netflix, so it's that extra boost, right?
It's not. Yeah, it's not a bit. It's a chunk. Probably
Yes.
and probably bigger than any of the other places that's been combined. So I think that's a fair point to bring it up that in those terms. Okay, let's one last point. And as I said, this is a meaty article, and we can take a bunch of different angles on this and talk for a very long time. Well, I guess this has been our main story. But I do want to acknowledge one last part, and it's coming back to the whole culture shock thing. First of all, Matt Alt kind of weaves a little explanation about the success of Shonen Jump and how it became the original bingeable Yeah, bingeable medium, because that's sort of how they decided on the success or how they compiled the success of their various titles. A lot of hit and misses. The ones that do become hits get compiled into their graphic novels into bingeable form, quote unquote. And then, as I said, on the topic of culture shocks, it's worth noting, and I didn't know this coming in, we don't really know much about Demon Slayer's creator, do we? It's a
Not
pseudonym.
really.
The name suggests the creator could be either a man or a woman, or non-defined.
The article states how there was another news article in Japan that quoted a Jump employee who describes the author as a female in their 30s. So, it's par for the course that some of the best Shonen Jump titles are made by women, like uh, Blue Exorcist or D Gray Man, or we think, or in non Shonen Jump, Full Metal Alchemist.
But Kevin, how can these women understand the hearts of boys?
I see
But
what you did
it
there.
comes back.
All they have to do is get the Jump formula right, and the editors will be happy.
No,
The magic formula.
Geoff is referencing how in multiple articles, because Shonen Jump is generally regarded as a boys' club, so to speak, and multiple people have been quoted saying how, like, yeah, women don't understand the heart of boys. Sad.
To the point where it's like a direct quote, like within Bakuman, which is like, oh, it's
Yeah.
very self-aware. That's distressing, but
But it brought out some interesting points. Jump has never had a female editor in its history, if you're like according to the article.
And that's the stated
And
reason
I never
why.
really thought of it about that. Like I get it. It's there, but it didn't really register with me in that sense. At least specifically when it came to Jump. We know we can have a long discussion about misogyny. I get it. Sexism, misogyny. I get it. I never really thought of it when it came to Jump. Although in a lot of respects it just doesn't surprise me, but here we are. The single most popular title, the one that could be the breakthrough, the real shock to the system, is written by a female.
And
at least
maybe,
potentially.
hopefully,
Written
it'll
by a
change the thoughts within Jump, because a lot of it could be Japanese culture and stuff like that, where it's like, well, if it isn't broke, we're not going to fix it. This is our golden goose. Our success is always run and done the way we've done it. It's like we have the formula, but hopefully they can break that pattern. You know what I mean? But it's a tough thing.
And
It's interesting. So, Geoff.
And if the author is a woman, how much of choosing an androgynous pen name was because of, not wanting their success to be at risk if they were, seen as a woman? Like,
That's so sad.
there
And that's kind
have
of
been
sad too.
successful, more obvious female authors, in Japan writing shonen series. Full Metal Alchemist is probably the most noteworthy there, but within that Shonen Jump, as Kevin mentioned, boys club, could that have been a factor of choosing that pen name? Or, maybe they don't identify as woman as far as the Japanese culture maybe mandates. Like, there's so many possibilities. And, it's interesting, like, hearing that made me more interested in Demon Slayer than I ever have been. I've heard, as Matt wrote in the article, that there are good elements to the character, but the fact that the main female is literally gagged has turned me off from that kind of perspective. But hearing that there's a possibility it's a woman author at least has me steering back on the interest, and I do think I'll get around to the series. But I did want to quickly mention on that the editor front there. I think that a big part of that is how often do people think about editors anyways. I think that they're very unsung heroes of the medium of comics, especially, serialized, more mass market comics, and even North American comics where the editors are more well known. They're not as well known as the artists or writers. And I think in Japan, I don't know if anyone could name a single manga editor, at least in North America.
No, that's a fair point. But still,
It's important that women hopefully be able to get into that Shonen Jump, or specifically, it just in my opinion, at least, especially if there's a literal barrier of they don't understand boys, so they can't. But I do know that other shonen series do have women editors. It's just to my knowledge, it's just Shonen Jump that kind of has that mentality.
Well, as I read that part of the story, I started to think about Gamergate and Comicsgate in a broader sense, and realize how did that happen sometimes? Because girls game, girls read comics, girls read shonen comics. Like, okay, I get it. It's sometimes for boys, but girls can get into it. It's happened. It's had to have happened here if for Demon Slayer, at least, if it got to that point, to have seen its success, and for a lot of other Shonen Jump titles, couldn't have been just fueled by boys.
Oh yeah, 100%.
So, as I said, we'll put up the link to the article on the New Yorker. Could be within a paywall, although you might be able to get a free look at different articles. It's a good read. If you really enjoyed Pure Invention, it's written almost with the same tone that Pure Invention was written. That's Matt Alt. James, we got to get him back. We got to get him to visit us again soon. We got to talk with him in another episode before the end of 2021.
I guess we'll have to see what the schedule holds for us all, right?
Right. Let me give a final thought, and in many ways, I'll tell this story to Matt as well, because he knows sometimes whenever I see something and I let him know, he at least is a good actor in showing some curiosity in what I found out. One of the episodes of Midnight Diner on Netflix depicts the trials and tribulations of, I think it was a season 3 episode, of a wannabe manga artist. It's a really funny episode about how he comes into the manga world with so much hope, gambling his entire future on his success as a manga artist. And then in the 30 minutes or the 20 some odd minutes of the episode, you see how everything comes crashing down on him. And by the end of the episode, he's completely broken. Like how his personal life, his professional life, everything, it just completely declines on him as he finds out he sucks. And at the beginning of the episode, you see another wannabe manga artist who was completely broken, leaving the diner supposedly for the last time. The common thread between these two characters, is an editor. And you find out, and to me, the story ends up being, maybe in many respects, or though not totally, the editor kind of failing them too. And by the end of both instances, for both of these artists, that editor is actively avoiding the broken artist both times. But the episode becomes cyclical, because by the end, the guy who came in with so much hope and is now broken is about to leave the diner for the final time, giving up. But then the first artist, who I told you at the beginning of the episode was broken, comes back in with a renewed hope and seemingly a lot wiser for the experience. And he just says to the now broken writer, just get your life back together. Your pen will wait for you. And then all the while he leaves, and then you see the editor coming out from the corner, realizing it's him, and then he quickly hides. It is both sad and very humorous to have watched that episode. And if I'm going to recommend at least one episode of Midnight Diner, although I recommend all 50 episodes of the television series, maybe that's one worth watching in that context, just in the context of everything we just talked about. Because yes, there's also a story about, like, there's another entry in the article about how would-be writers kind of go through a boot camp of sorts if they want to be a jump writer. As I said, Demon Slayer's proving there's merit to the boot camp, to the juggernaut. And maybe that's the concern Miyazaki now sees. Okay. On that note, let's go through the other bullets we had related to Demon Slayer. And they are both related to the movie itself. So on Thursday, Polygon mentioned that the Demon Slayer movie will stream exclusively on Funimation. Way to go, Funimation. There's using your power right there. It won't stream anywhere else, not on Crunchyroll, not on Netflix. Get your subscription now, $5.99 a month.
Yeah,
I honestly can't wait till Funimation isn't like doing streaming anymore, because their interface is just so garbage. Like, it's just not good. I'm watching this new show, Full Dive, and it's just, I would love to watch it on Crunchyroll, but no, fucking Funimation, man.
Yeah, it's kind of wonky at times. They've made different changes throughout the years, and nothing seems to stick. And
how's the new app?
Oh, sorry. The other thing too is that, yeah, it remains to be seen whether or not they're gonna, like, you have to pay for the subscription to watch it, or if they'll just make it for free.
Yeah, there's no word if it's on the free tier at the moment.
I think it actually probably you'll have to have paid up basically to watch it, because they did a similar thing with Goblin Slayer last year on October 31st, and they said, okay, it's streaming this day, and you can only watch it this day for the dub, and if you didn't pay, then good luck. It's like,
Yeah,
so it's basically like Disney Plus exclusive or something, right?
And that's what we probably figured.
It's Mulan, right?
So it's an exclusive engagement for those who obviously couldn't make it to theaters, like us up here when they closed all the theaters. So it's kind of like, okay, this is your movie, but from home, and you have one day.
Well, I think, but something tells me this sticks there for a while, at least on Funimation. Worth noting also, yeah, you can download to own. That's an option if you're willing to pay the $20 or so for it. Many are.
But in regards to the interface, it's like, it's okay, but I know what people said. I'm not sure. Mo, have you watched any of the show on the new app they've just released on some of the platforms over the past month or couple of months?
No, just the web interface.
Oh, okay, the web. Okay, I'm not sure if they've improved that one. They improved the apps and stuff like that, but yeah, PC might be a question mark.
Mm-hmm. See, as I said, you can still download to own, and there'll be options. It's just that the only streaming provider, it's Funimation. Get your subscription now.
I wonder if you can download to own, Mike, because when you do these type of one-day special engagements, I wonder, do they turn it off or something like that because they want those people to stay on there? It always makes me wonder.
Well, it says the streaming begins on June 22nd, so on Tuesday. If you're to believe the Polygon article, saying the download to own VOD is also on the 22nd. And it just sounds like you will have the option, like once it's on Funimation's platform, it'll stay there. I don't think there's an exclusive limited engagement at the very least. The likely scenario I could foresee is that might be the only place you could see it, at least on the streaming platform. If you're willing to pay for a rental, pay for a limited rental VOD, pay for download to own, that option is there. But a strict stream, no extra cost aside from the subscription, Funimation. That's just what I'm seeing, and they have the right. It's their right, because as Wu-Tang so eloquently states.
Oh.
Anyway.
No, we need to like pre-record that and have like inserted at this moment.
Huh? Well, you know the deal. I mean that could be the way that's just a way to try and get that. Where does Funimation rank among anime consumers right now?
Depends on who you
Probably
talk to.
below Crunchy, probably below Netflix.
Oh hell yeah!
Like it's not anywhere. It needs something. This
It
is
needs to be.
something.
It
It's
needs
not
just.
chopped
It,
liver.
needs, it needs to be integrated into something else.
I mean, you need more than that, I suppose. But
And the crazy thing is, both of them, and depending on how Crunchyroll and Funimation, if the merger does happen, will they be incentivized to actually improve their services and stuff like that? Because people have complained on both services for number of years and stuff like that. And it's like, could you put some money into improving your interfaces and stuff like that and make it better? And every time we feel like we make a jump, it doesn't feel like a jump at all and stuff like that. And then you see the big boys like Netflix and other things where it's like, this is what we want. You guys now have that capital. Can you make it happen if you say you want to actually compete against them?
mm-hmm. I mean, both could become Sony. What a name to be tied to. But it's glitchy. Sometimes kind of like playing a PlayStation 1 disc back in the day for me.
Just imagine people trying to watch the Funimation app on their PS5 and they're like, I have this great machine from Sony, but why does their streaming service suck so much?
Isn't that the irony? Anyway, well, as I said, this is a we're talking about watching it digitally. On the topic though of DVDs, Blu-rays, and otherwise physical media, the Blu-ray and DVDs have been or became available in Japan over the past week, and when you combine it all, 1 million in 3 days. 1 million sales. Not bad.
I'm sorry there, Michael. How much was that again? One more time.
1 million.
That's right, a whole 1 million.
And some of those were DVDs, which is kind of crazy considering they said over outside Japan that DVD is dead. No one will buy those. But supposedly on top of 268,000 limited edition Blu-rays, 201,000 regular edition Blu-rays. They got 115,000 rather. Obviously, these numbers are larger now. Limited edition DVD, and then they have a regular edition DVD that sold.
Just
Uh,
like that tactile, like that
was
tactile feel.
218,000
Mhm.
regular edition DVDs. It sounds like, but that's interesting that, as you said, those DVDs still went out the door as well, and they were done separately. So, and
It
that
kind
shows
of
the power of Japan too, I guess.
yeah, it kind of speaks to how that the idea to me that there are aspects of Japanese life technologically people will come into the Japanese people will as a society as a whole will come into kicking and screaming.
And it feels like it
Blu-rays,
definitely crossed generations, didn't it? And that
yeah,
shows it again, doesn't it? I wouldn't be surprised, ironically, if they had released a VHS tape of Demon Slayer, and they probably could have sold 100,000, ironically.
you know
That
what?
sounds
I'm not.
ridiculous, but
That's hilarious. That's a hilarious thought, and I cannot dismiss that now that we've brought it up. I can't dismiss that. It wouldn't sell badly. So fair point. Fair point. It's just keep in mind that mentality to collect exists amongst us here in the West too. Yes or no, right? I'd say very much so. Still. So, first of all, do we have a sense? I haven't taken a good look. Is there do we have a sense of a Blu-ray coming of the movie?
at some point, but it's probably going to be like they did with the series. So it's going to be Aniplex first, and they're going to do their special limited edition, which is going to be more expensive. And if we're lucky, maybe it'll be the end of the year. So maybe November, December, but it could be early next year. And then once they have the window over, just like they did with the TV series, they're probably is going to be a cheaper regular edition released by Funimation a few months down the road once they've gotten their limited edition money through Aniplex. But the interesting thing of Aniplex properties, Demon Slayer is the only one where they've had cross-company releases. No other Aniplex title has had that except Demon Slayer so far, which is
Yep.
intriguing.
Yep.
And even and they could price it through the roof, and I think they'll be happy with the sales.
I think
That's
they
the
got
way
the
I'm looking at
sales on Aniplex, and they probably got the sales on Funimation. So
it. All Wu Tang, as astutely points out. Okay, so we're talking physical items. Here's a kind of intriguing story, and Kevin kind of mentioned it. And this was earlier this month. Shueisha has, and this is still on Demon Slayer. Shueisha has tried to trademark 6 clothing patterns from Demon Slayer. I guess based on various characters' outfits, and they went 50%, or they batted 500. So 3 of them were approved to be trademarked. 3 of them denied, and they're all they're based on the outfits of various characters:
Yeah.
Tomioka, Kocho, Shinobu, and Kyojuro. Their patterns were approved, but of the main characters, Zenitsu, Nezuko, Tanjiro, nope. This is odd. This is one of those very odd stories I hear. I mean, I guess with the popularity of cosplay and dollar bill, y'all here too, right? I guess
Yep.
there's money there could be money to be made if Shueisha plays their cards right, and I guess they're trying to play their cards.
Because plenty of people have made money, making T-shirt prints or full-on outfits or just using the print for whatever thing. Like that's people have been profiting off of it. So Shueisha is trying to do whatever they can to protect their assets.
And maybe increase them. Can't blame. I guess.
kind of
Okay,
interesting
fair.
though when you look at the designs too, right? And I know Kevin probably looks at a number of designs when he's seen different clothing and stuff like that. But they said for the reason for rejection for the pre was that basically relative simplicity and ubiquity of the designs was the reason for those ones being rejected compared to the others. And in the mind's eye, it's like, really? And I'm still not sure when I look at all 6.
Kyojiro's should have been rejected too. I think his is very simple. Uh, and then yeah, Tanjiro and Zenitsu's are very basic as well, as is Nezuko's. Shinobu and Gyu's, you can argue that are unique enough and warrant that trademark.
The only
Too
one that
basic.
the only one that I would completely reject is the one that's just the checkerboard green and black.
Yeah.
Like just from like, an art and design standpoint, like there's no way I think that you could blanket that as being protected. The others I think have varying degrees of, you could argue for or against them, but I can't see why they thought it would work to copyright green and black squares.
I guess I'd have to see what history would have said about kimono and happy coats. Did I get that right? Am I pronouncing that right?
I think so.
Well, it did work for Christian Louboutin,
Mm-hmm.
having
I
the
think
red soles on the bottom of the shoes and heels.
Well, but like a lot of these things really depend on context, right? Like, Home Depot famously, they own that type of orange, but like mostly, no other hardware or related field can use that. It's not like if you happen to paint a painting in that mostly that color, they're going to sue you if the painting is of an actual orange or of a fish or of, something like that. But it's difficult when I think it gets more challenging when you're getting into things like fabric patterns.
Okay. If people are finding this kind of a dickish thing for Shueisha wanting to do, Can I play a yes or no? And it is ultimately apples and oranges, but I just want to see what level it is when I make this comparison. You want to play yes no for a second?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, yes or no. This is about as dickish as Kim Kardashian trying to trademark the term kimono for her slimwear. Because that was a controversy within the last year because she actually she actually came out with a line of slimwear calling it kimono wear.
Less dickish.
I think it's one of those well-timed marketing ploys where they know the outrage is going to happen, and then they just pull it back, and then they release their stupid alternative name. Double the press.
So you think that was just for a publicity stunt?
I mean, it can't be that dumb, right?
Well,
That's the
given
interesting part.
family, right? I'd say
Yeah.
that was the case.
I mean, we can make the argument Kim Kardashian plays one on television, but if she somehow managed to amass that type of empire, she ain't an idiot.
Damn straight.
So she's done something. Her or her mother or the people around her. She's at least smart enough to know how to handle this.
I don't think that move was completely without merit. I do think it was tone deaf, but like if you had a specific, a very specific design and style and you wanted to call that kimono and then said no one else can make a similar type of clothing to this, especially if it wasn't overtly based on an actual kimono and call it kimono, I think that there's at least a leg to stand on, maybe not two, but one rickety wooden leg. I think that that's safe to say.
Mm-hmm.
But I think this is still less less of a dickish move.
Okay.
Sounds like we're all in agreement, Mike. Just a
Yeah, yeah.
less
I want
dickish
to
move and
be.
stuff like that.
I just want it to be. Yeah, I know, and no dick immunity here. Although we'll probably be talking about that just towards the end.
But
Okay.
hey, Demon Slayer has lifted all boats, right? There was an article a few weeks ago about the canned coffee Demon Slayer, and that was lifting the waters of that company and stuff like that because they had characters on the cans and people wanted all the characters, right?
Now you're making me think BTS and McDonald's. Okay, I think we're done our Demon Slayer talk this week. How do we do there?
Pretty good, pretty good.
We managed to
Yeah,
get off the train, right?
yeah, we did. And now we're in. Well, we did mention this is all an all bullets episode. They were well, that was a cannonball there. Let's go with the rest of the bullets that we planned for the evening. Digital manga service Azuki launches June 28th. This was mentioned on Anime News Network. You gave also a blog post in relation to this one, James. So walk me through this one.
So this one was announced this week, and it's a digital manga service, a new one that's going to launch on June 28th. It's going to be on iOS and Android mobile. And then the other thing that I haven't seen, I feel, from Mangamo and others is that they'll have a PC based version as well. And it's going to be the subscription model that you can go in, all you can eat. They've made a deal with Kodansha. And if you look at the Anime News Network article, they got a very big chunk of the Kodansha catalog. Plus, they're going to be doing simulpubs of current Kodansha properties and stuff like that. And then I'm guessing they're going to have some other publishers involved as well. But it looks like, given just the Kodansha content, it's going to be a big amount out, hopefully on the 28th. And the other interesting thing, if you look at their site based on who's involved, it's some former Crunchyroll contributors and people that work there. And I think one of them we had mentioned was Evan Minto because he's done freelancing for Crunchyroll and Otaku USA and done many panels at many
And
different conventions.
podcasts.
Yeah.
Yeah, like he's everywhere.
But
I mean, I do know the name. I'm just not familiar with everything, but I'm aware of that name.
But I feel like some of them, even on the Crunchyroll side, that may have worked there. If they had worked on the manga side of Crunchyroll, Crunchyroll had the ability to make something like this happen, but it feels like they just gave up. they put up a few Kodansha mangas and a few other mangas from other publishers, like Fudabashi, I believe it was, but they never continued any further. They still have new manga that happens to come up every week, but not that much. And it's kind of puzzling, to say the least.
Sort of like, remember when I gave that thought about Sony having all the components to become the leader in the smartphone revolution, but not putting it all together? Sort of like that.
And then the other
And this is
key
a smaller
factor,
degree, I get. This is a smaller scale, I get that, but that's what I link. That's what I liken it to.
and the
Missed
other,
opportunities.
mhm.
Sorry, James.
I guess that's true too, and stuff like that. That they took what they did, they were going further on that. But the other thing it looks like they got from all the partners that they went with is that this will be English only, obviously, at the moment, but it's for everywhere around the world except Japan. And I feel
Ah,
like a
yes.
lot of other publishers, I'm not sure about Mangamo and a few of the other digital publishers, but I feel like there are more region restrictions for them. It isn't like only Japan is restricted. I feel they have more restrictions on where they can show their English versions.
So this is kind of a larger blanket.
Larger blanket, and you also can do PC, which can be good for some people on different tablets and stuff like that. Because not every, I know people, smartphones are ubiquitous, but I like to do it either on a tablet or on a PC and stuff like that.
Okay, educate me for a couple seconds here. Let's go through the services as they are now, online, digital. Mangamo, Shonen Jump, Manga Planet, Futakiya, with Manga Planet,
Manga Plus.
Azuki coming up. Is there any other names I should be aware of?
Manga Plus.
Because I have trouble keeping up sometimes.
Kevin mentioned Manga Plus, which I believe is associated with Shonen Jump, and those ones I at least know on Shonen Jump and stuff like that that they do have a free component and stuff like that, and all the other ones, and even Azuki do not have. Well, actually, Azuki does have a free component now that I look at it, because it says that they will allow subscribers to read manga without ads, and that's $4.99 US per month, but they said they can access select chapters with advertisements. Whereas Shonen Jump and Manga Plus, I believe, Kevin, as you said, there aren't ads, but you can access it for free for only a limited time when the chapter is released.
So Manga Plus is Shueisha's initiative, and uh, I don't really. The ads are very unobtrusive, if at all. I don't think there are any ads actually. I don't know. I don't remember, but yes, that's the thing. They do give you they always give you the first 3 chapters for free, and then they'll give you the last 3 or last 6 chapters for free, depending on the title. Okay. And then there also are some Manga Plus exclusives on there that they're probably from some of the other magazines in Shueisha's catalog that Viz probably chose not to license. Like there are some Shonen Jump titles that didn't get licensed, like Hinamaru Sumo or Teenage Renaissance David, for example. There's also Anchor Comics, which I don't like to bring up because that's the former Manga Rock people in terms of other services. My question with Azuki is, will I have a free option? Will I be able to read the latest chapter for free?
And I think that's what they'll have with the ad support and stuff like that. And the other thing is, as we said, how long will that last for ad support? And it may be similar to what we've seen in the past. But the other thing, as we know with Kodansha and maybe even with some other things, is some of the series they mentioned have only been digital only, and we might never see a physical release of some of the titles.
Okay. Good to know that there is. They'll probably do like latest chapter for free or something, and they'll probably give you at least like the first couple chapters for free. Because it really depends with Kodansha, because Kodansha's never been one to really let their content be free for a long stretch of time. you usually have to pay for some sort of service, like with like Mangamo or with Comixology. And that's another thing I want to bring up. The Comixology exclusive titles are not included. So there is no Beck, there is no Tramps Like Us, there is no Drops of God, there is no Initial D, there's also no Mars, which got very popular in the last few months because of TikTok.
It'll be interesting to see if it's kind of like Epic, where they paid for that exclusivity and then the window runs out and then you see it on other services. And even if some of these other services might try to line up similar deals, right?
Could this be a deal breaker for some people?
Not many, I would imagine.
Okay.
Although I would have loved to have paid for this to read Drops of God rather than Amazon.
Yeah, I know where you're going with that one. Well, it has my attention. Any service, like if I can remember them, I do want to personally get more into those myself, but only so much I can watch and read at the same time.
I do
And
like.
I annoy people when I try and do both at the same time.
Oh, I was just gonna say quickly, I do like that they will have comment threads for either series or maybe even individual chapters, because I feel like a lot of what has made manga popular on the internet is people commenting on the latest chapter, whether it's through pirate websites or through Reddit on the manga subreddit or on any individual anime or manga titles subreddit.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good way to get people to stay on their platform.
And to keep them
Engagement.
engaged, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
engagement is still worth something, even if not at the outset. Just keeping them on the premises could help you very much somewhere else down the road.
And it sounds like the founders, this was something they wanted to make happen and stuff like that. And they wanted a platform that they envisioned they would want to read on and stuff like that. And other fans would enjoy. And probably what they envisioned, maybe what Crunchyroll's service could have been and stuff like that if they had constantly engaged it more and improved it. You know what
But
I
they
mean?
gave a
It still
shit.
feels like it was forever in beta.
Yeah, they didn't give a shit. That's why. There wasn't anyone
Hmm.
who cared enough, I would imagine.
Yeah. I don't know what else to add to this right now. It's just there's some curiosity, I admit, and there's some titles in under various publishers. Now that I've watched the anime, I wouldn't mind knowing a little bit more about the story.
I
And
think
it'll
this
be
is a
nice
good
to
start.
engage with people, right? Because we
Yeah.
don't get that as much with all the publishers or all the services we had mentioned before.
Kevin?
Yeah, I think this is a good start. Uh, Kodansha seems to be like the town bicycle when it comes to getting their content available. Like they would rather not create their own service, but they'd rather just have their stuff be as accessible as possible, which is great. Uh, the key will be whether or not they can get other publishers on board, because so far as I can tell, the the manga publishers really don't want to be in one service. Like a manga reader's dream is to have everything on one play in one spot, and like Crunchyroll was at one point, and that probably won't ever happen. Maybe it will, but there was definitely reluctance on the publisher's part to do that. It seems like everyone wants to do their own thing, and now we have so many different manga services. I'm interested to see who sticks around and who perseveres and who fades away.
But I definitely think that's true. Like Jump, Shueisha, and Shugakukan, like all of them, I think they want to stick with Manga Plus and the Jump app as well. I don't think they want to get it on other platforms. They want to more control, I feel. And they have that more worldwide reach too with those apps too, I believe. And they do other languages as well. So it's a
But just on
full global experience, I guess.
yeah, and it's on brand name too. They have their developed brand, and it can work out that way.
No Shaman King either, from the looks of it.
Well, that's a deal breaker for Geoff.
Pretty much. I'm buying their print release, so I should be fine there. But although like a lot of the spin-offs are digital only still, so that's it definitely would have had me interested. I think the only Hiroyuki Takei series that they mentioned was the Samurai Cat one, which is fine, but
Oh, that one,
it's
Nikogahara.
yeah, it's not Shaman King, it's not even Ultimo, so I gave the news a little bit of a pass.
Okay. Well, we should continue and finish passing by this piece of news. Although, okay, this apparently made some headway and some talk this week. Let me read the first line of the Anime News Network article, and then see how we transition from there. Batman made headlines on Monday when Harley Quinn showrunner Justin Halpern revealed that in the adult animated comedy show's third season, a reference to Batman performing cunnilingus on Catwoman was vetoed by DC Comics. And one thing leads to another, and ultimately the talk, or some part of the talk, ended up being, what about other comic book characters, and then in turn animation characters and anime characters? And then the talk eventually turned to various Gundam characters, namely Char. And for a response, we ended up digging out, or I think it was Surat, ended up digging out an old early 90s interview with Yoshiyuki Tomino.
And it was from Mobile Suit Gundam Char's Counterattack fan book, of all things.
Okay, you guys carry this, because my mind is still boggled by this.
Okay.
And really, I didn't get a chance to read everything because I was still digesting the Matt Alt article.
Okay.
Help me out here.
So,
because this is hilarious.
On June 15th, there was some discussion on Twitter. There was a user named Some Clever Pun on Twitter who posed the question, does Char Aznable eat pussy? Has Tomino said anything on this? Some people said my instinct says no, but then Daryl Surratt mentioned that there is absolutely an interview with Yoshiyuki Tomino where he talks about how the son of Zeon Daikun definitely eats pussy. They were asking him about Char's counterattack in the scene with him and Nanai sharing drinks. I don't have a link now, but you should be able to find it. That is a direct quote. Response, LMAO, hell yeah. I will 100% take your word for it. And then Daryl later wrote, it's 12:45 a.m. And of course, there is no way I will be able to go to bed if I do not find the quote from Yoshiyuki Tomino about how it is a central tenet of Char Aznable to eat pussy. This is from the Char's Counterattack fan book in which Tomino is being interviewed by Hideaki Anno, and he provided screenshots, and it received almost 200 retweets.
Including one from you.
Yes, including one from the...
Like, I could have... Like, as you tell this story, I could just imagine Daryl reading the script and hearing his voice as he said all that.
And it was an interesting counterpoint.
It just seems so Surat to do something like that. And I mean that in a fun way. In a hilarious way.
Yes.
Like, it's just here. And do not dismiss this, because Daryl is also a freelance writer for Otaku USA. The guy knows what he's talking about. He researches. He does his work. This guy knows what he's doing. You can't dismiss it. It's tough to really dismiss.
It's just further proof.
And unfortunately, it's tough for me to envision now, too. Sorry, go ahead.
It's just further proof that Yoshiyuki Tomino is just one deranged man.
It was kind of interesting, the interview and stuff. Like, there were a lot of interesting quotes. Even the first part where Tomino talks about, to a certain degree, as you get older, you can really understand a person through that part. And then it's like in brackets sex. And at those times, you can't detach sex from your thinking. That's why I absolutely have to imagine that Nanai's vagina is like. It is something I particularly think about during the script writing phase. And he goes on and on. You're like, wow, he really thinks about this. Like, it gets into details you wouldn't even think about. And so it's kind of the polar opposite of that DC thing where it's just like, no.
Well, okay, let's go to the DC part, because like this is one of those say it ain't so type of moments. Say it ain't so, and there go all the sales for toys. Like it's one of those what you can't say that because it may cut into your toy sales.
The line that DC used, apparently, like I guess allegedly, was "Our heroes don't do that," which is such a bizarre way to frame it. As a lot of people online have said, if they had said, "We have concerns about, this information getting out regarding a character who is still heavily marketed to children," that would be a bad argument, but it would be a better argument. And I
It
say,
would be bad, but I could take that one.
yeah,
And it's
like
I
weird
wouldn't
too
accept it, but I could
because they put it
because
as adult animated comedy show, right?
exactly, like Poison Ivy and Harley Quinn are both on Superhero Girls. Very sort of aggressively marketed. I'm guessing to like the 7 to 12 crowds, kind of at most or at oldest. And I don't think DC would have had a problem with those characters engaging in sexual acts of any kind on that show, at least implied. Like it's not a porn series. Um, so any sort of implication with those characters, I think would be fine. But the sacred cow that is Batman, they were so worried, which is odd. But well, maybe not odd. It's I guess expected.
you get it on the marketing part, but yeah, I guess I can understand your disappointment. Is it a total dodge or is it at least a parry? A parry isn't great either, but maybe more acceptable.
Yeah,
You were hoping for a
exactly.
parry, and you
Yeah,
were hoping for a parry when we ended up seeing a dodge, right?
pretty much. Like there's so many other ways they could have said that, and I'm glad that information got out. We'll see if Harley Quinn gets a fourth season,
Oh
if
boy,
this jeopardizes it. It depends on how much money it makes, probably. But
because
there's
sorry,
been I'm gonna
you know what
power
I was
through
about to
the
say, right?
reference. Oh, absolutely, I did. Um, they're famously, I think it was at the new beginning of the New 52, which was one of DC's comic reboots. There was a somewhat famous Batman Catwoman sex scene. So DC as a company is not afraid of, Batman having a sexual identity. For some reason, DC is afraid of doing something, more directed at female pleasure, which is the main like hair pulling, combined with shirt tugging, like what are you thinking? Saying this, but I don't think they intended their words to get out there.
Hmm. You had me thinking though about accessibility and how much of this is wide for wide consumption and how much of this is niche. When you look at things like the Marvel universe and the DC universe, we think of them these days in moving picture properties, like movies, like cartoons, like television shows. But it has its base in comics, which tends to be lost on most of the general public. So I get the feeling it just feels like let's keep it on that part because it's not where the general consumption is.
At least
But
when
if
it
people want to find it,
at least
it's
when
there.
it yeah at least when it comes to Batman, again, I think that you have two of arguably the highest profile bisexual characters in fiction in Harley Quinn and Poison Ivy, and I feel like because their sexuality is kind of imbued into their characters at this point in their sort of cultural history, I feel that Warner Brothers and DC and whoever owns the parent company, whoever is the parent company in 2021, would see that and be like, okay, this is in line. But because of that media transfer that Batman has, they were so afraid. But I think you're right. Like as was said, or I don't think we mentioned it, but in the article and has that Matt Alt wrote about Demon Slayer and has been mentioned many times, manga has outpaced superhero comics. just as a market share type of thing. And it's interesting, how much comics can, unfortunately using the term, get away with, compared with the mainstream of these movies. Like in the Marvel and DC movies, I don't think there's been an LGBT character on the big screen, at least as far as a superhero. Arguably Wonder Woman, but I don't think anything in the canon of the films have betrayed that fact. And as you kind of get smaller, like, then you go to the HBO Netflix series, you have a little bit more representation, and then you go one step lower of CW and ABC, and like, okay, here we can have your transgender characters, any sexuality you like. And then when you get to the comics, it's like, yeah, there's a non-binary Flash. There's so many, Hulkling and Wiccan. We're going to outright, talk about these characters. And as you get sort of where less eyes will see them, the less the parent companies care. And I think that's sort of where it, comes down to is Batman is seen by too many eyes and they're scared. Versus something like Char, it's Japan, so they have a completely different relationship with sexuality.
And some of that's probably Tomino too.
It just gets interesting when, well, as you just said, Geoff, the manga is becoming is increasing in terms of its consumption. So there's another crossroads, and we talk a lot about crossroads within anime and manga. There's another one probably to come.
Manga's never, to my knowledge, manga has never had a specific comics code of authority equivalent to it, though. I don't know a lot about Japanese publishing history, but that's just my assumption.
But that code is what may have prevented a lot of these developments from happening sooner, I think. I could be wrong. But as I said, I think there's a lot of discussions still to come, and we'll take different angles on them as they happen. I look forward to the talks, to be honest, in the years to come. But on the topic of somebody's sex drive, finally, Koichi Yamadera. They announced this week he married for the third time this week when the 60-year-old Yamadera, the great voice actor, he of Spike Spiegel fame, announced that he married DJ, announcer, model Shoko Robin Okada, who's 28 years old. Does anyone want to say anything here? Congratulations, for starters. Or do you want me to go down, like, as I mentioned, this is his third marriage.
He was born when he was 32 years old. If I'm doing my mental math correctly.
Yeah, if you get the math right, he 31, 32.
That's about my age, which makes this extra disturbing for me now.
Like, I mean, free country. I get it.
They're adults.
Can we? But the thing is, it's just a funny. Like, I find a bit of humor in this. I mean, good on him, good on them. Hope it works out, because his last two marriages certainly didn't. His first marriage was to a voice actress, Mika Kanai. She's now 57. His second marriage, which fizzled out a couple years ago, Rie Tanaka. She's best known we can go through her roles. I remember Chi from Chobits. She's now 42. Every time he seems to be trading in for a younger. It's just boggles me sometimes.
I think that, like, as people have mentioned here, like, they're both adults, and it's not even a situation of, an 18-year-old or whatever the equivalent of is in Japan. So it's not there's any indication of grooming or like waiting for it to be, legal. I think it
So
is
that's what makes it less like, yeah, there's no real creepiness to it. It's just I find more humor in it than anything else. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I think that as you've kind of mentioned, I think it's the, as I'm sure you've said and others have said, the sort of joke of trading in for the newer model. I think is kind of the extent of the weirdness there. Like
The
it's
the
Yeah,
double take,
probably
the
looking
double
back.
triple take. I
Because
mean, I
as
can
they
say
said, they worked together, right? On the radio
yeah,
show Bayline, I think it was after Yamadira left that they decided to, I guess, get together and
or
couldn't
at least
leave each
publicize
other
it,
alone, as they said.
or
Someone
at
used.
least publicize all that, right?
Hmm.
I mean, there's like there's punchlines here. He in relation to the fact he played Spike, Last Gunslinger, See You Space Cowboy, Bang. I don't know. We can goes on and on. But are we done yet?
And don't forget, as they said too, I guess you could think of it because he did play Kaji in Neon Genesis Evangelion.
Oh
So
yes.
his
Well,
current role that would be big, though I don't think it would tie well, would be supposedly he now is doing Inspector Zenigata in Lupin the Third. He took over
Heyo.
after Goro Naya unfortunately passed away. So
Congratulations. That's all I could say. But it just it certainly popped out when these appeared on my feed.
I guess
And
more the thing is, hopefully third time is the charm, right? But
oh, you
with these
hope
other things, you
because
never know, right?
I think this isn't as much a punchline to me as it is the fact that he's had two failed marriages.
yeah, it happens.
It happens, yes, but this part isn't as much the part that I joke around about. Like it's his two failed marriages, and it's also a reminder I really should get Rie Tanaka's recent photo book, which is from last year. We'll put a link to at least the cover. But that's about it. How do we do? How do we do with this? How do we do with the quasi bullets episode?
About an hour and a half.
Yeah,
Yeah,
about an
man.
hour and a half.
90 minutes of solid conversations.
Yeah,
We
it's
had Demon Slayer Palooza, which I guess is now a main topic, and then few bullets, gray bullets.
We should have like a regular segment, Demon Watch.
yeah, Demon Slayer party.
I have to say, I didn't need an article to tell me that Char Aznavour ate pussy. Like, he does look like a Chad.
I was going to say you didn't need Tomino to tell you either, right?
Nope.
I think aren't we going to hear about Amuro at some point?
Well, apparently, I also saw a tweet made in that discourse where the great SG on Twitter wrote, "This is the same Yoshiyuki Tomino who made sure to include in the Gundam novelization that Sayla gave Amuro a locket with her pubes in it after they had sex. This is super on brand for him." Oh,
So
Tomino.
as humorous and as bizarre as this conversation seemingly came across, do we really come away surprised?
Not really.
I mean, in many respects, probably not. Hey, can't wait for the feedback on that. But
I guess the more
it's also
interesting part, thinking Mike, is thinking how old Tomino is, and he's in the same kind of generation as Miyazaki, and they come at anime in very different ways in their mindset. That's for sure.
You know what? That's well, yeah. Coming back down to Miyazaki and all that. Well, Miyazaki's in his 80s. Tomino is how old is he? Well, he's in his mid 70s, isn't he? Mid to late?
Yeah,
Like only
something to
not too
that.
much. Yeah, but not too much younger. You're
Hmm.
right. Different approaches. Yeah, one way to put it. Although, and this is just coming back to just to complete the whole circle for tonight, and coming back to Demon Slayer. It's worth noting. Remember one more time, Demon Slayer Demon Slayer in the US is the highest grossing R-rated movie ever in American theaters, and it's the number 2 anime in US theaters of all time, behind Pokemon. Eat your heart out, Miyazaki, and Pokemon movie, you're next. Seemingly, anyway. Okay, that's all we got for this episode, because really, what else can we really add? But one more time, a reminder where you can reach us, because we'd really like to hear some feedback from anybody who was offended. AnimeRoundtable@gmail.com, at AnimeRoundtable, AnimeRoundtable.com. And we also have a Spotify playlist too, so check that out as well as the podcast itself there. Also, don't forget, if possible, to leave us a review if you can, wherever you get your podcast, because reviews might help us in the algorithm and help us find new listeners.
5 stars, please. Or 4.
Word of mouth also helps too. So if you like this, and you know somebody who you think could find this interesting, let them know. We typically do episodes once every other week, although we may do something in our off weeks too, like we've done today. That said, subscribe to us wherever you're hearing this, so you can be notified whenever something new drops in the feed. Until next time, thanks for listening. Good day from Toronto. And join us again for another edition of the Anime Roundtable.